All right, everybody. I'm Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart, and The Lonesome Crown, all published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today, I'm going to be reviewing Whispers by Dean Koontz. Now, you always review the covers first. I mean, what can you say about this? It's pretty simple. Just got the guy's name in big bold letters, title, hands over face, kind of like it looks like a scary horror novel. It's all right. It's all right cover. Decent. Author on the back with his dog. Anyway, this book was written in 1980. It was the very first Dean Koontz book to hit it big. I mean, Dean Koontz had been writing novels since 1968. So he'd been, for 12 solid years, he'd been writing novels under a ton of different pseudonyms. He was writing them under a lot of different names. And finally, he wrote this one under his real name, Dean Koontz. And it hit it big. It was the first one to hit it big, which, if you know the history of this book, which he talks a little bit about in the afterword, he's like, this is the very last book I ever wrote on a typewriter. First of all, because it was the late 70s, I would imagine, when he was writing it. So he was writing it on the last ever on a typewriter before he got a computer. And for those of you young people that don't even know what a typewriter is, let me just explain. Just imagine like a steampunk laptop / printer all in one, just with metal gears, and you just type, and the paper's right in it. It just does it's an ingenious invention. It really is. Now we've got computers. This was the very last book he ever wrote on a typewriter. God, could you imagine the revisions? Having to do revisions on you writers out there, you people that follow me because you're writers, just imagine having to do all of your revisions on a typewriter. You just want to change a few sentences and you gotta retype the entire manuscript. Or at least, I don't know how. I don't know how they did it. I don't know how they did it. That's back when men were men. We are mere boys now. We are not men. Back when men used to use typewriters, harpoon whales with spears and kill them. We don't do that. We're not even asked to do that kind of stuff anymore, guys. Anyway, this was the longest book he'd ever written. When he turned it in, like I said, he'd written he was a published author. He'd published 20 books up to this point under different pseudonyms. None of them had really been a hit. He was just sort of a mid-list author. Then he wrote this big book, it's a good-sized horror novel, about 500 pages. He wrote this, turned it into his publishers, and they were like, no, too big. That's too big. All of the other stuff you've done has been 250, 300 pages. You need to cut this in half. And he refused. He stuck to his guns. Dean Koontz said, to the publishers, and was like, you know what? This is the book I want. I want it to be long. You publish it long, or you don't publish it all. And so the publisher was like, yeah, all right, we'll publish it. Became a massive hit. Absolutely tremendously huge hit. It was like, this was the springboard to his career. It just sold and then he, publishers, sometimes the authors know what they're talking about. Anyway, what's it about? This is dynamite. I can actually see why this was his breakout hit, because this book is bananas, crazy, horrific, horror, gut-wrenching, thrilling, edge of your seat, page-turning mayhem. This book, I can see why this thing became such a huge hit for him. Because from the get-go, from the very opening, you're just like, your blood is chilled to the bone. Because the very first couple pages, the prologue, introduces us to the killer, and this guy is whacked out. This guy is nutso. He is just a bad dude. And the way Dean Koontz writes it, it's very, very gripping, very, very page-turning, very, very chilling. And the killer's name is Fry. He's a big dude. He is a rich dude. He owns a winery in Napa Valley. And he comes down to San Diego to kill a woman who he thinks that this woman, he has to kill her over and over and over because she keeps like inhabiting the bodies of different women, if that makes sense. So he runs into people and he's like, she's alive, I've killed her. He's killed her over and over, but it's always just, he thinks that her spirit is inhabiting the bodies of other women. So he's a serial killer, but he keeps thinking that he's killing the same person over and over. So what happens is he lives up in Napa Valley, and this movie maker, this filmmaker named Hillary, comes up to make a film up there in Napa Valley, and he's like, that's her, I've got to kill her again. She's inhabiting that movie maker, I've got to kill the movie maker because this girl that I have to kill over and over is now inhabiting the movie maker. So he, and it's just, oh my gosh. And the way they describe the killer, let me just read a description here. So he stalks this movie maker, and this filmmaker, Hillary, is just a young, up-and-coming filmmaker, really popular. Everybody knows who she is, and he snuck into her house. He's tracked her to San Diego, and he snuck. This all happens within the first couple 20 pages or so. So I'm not spoiling anything here, but just when he this is the description of this killer when he breaks into the girl's house, right? The instant that she spotted the knife, Hillary froze. She stopped backing away from him, even though he continued to approach. A knife will do that. It chokes you up, freezes your heart, brings an uncontrollable tremor to your guts. Surprisingly few people have the stomach to use a knife against another living thing. More than any other weapon, it makes you aware of the delicacy of flesh, the terrible fragility of human life. In the damage that he wreaks, the attacker can see all too clearly the nature of his own mortality. A gun, a draught of poison, a firebomb, a blunt instrument, a strangler's piece of rope, all can be used relatively cleanly, most of them at a distance. But the man with a knife must be prepared to get dirty, and he must get in close, so close that he can feel the heat escaping from the wounds as he makes them. It takes a special courage or insanity to slash at another person and not be repelled by the warm blood spurting over your own hands. That's the kind of writing Dean Koontz does, man. It's just blood-curdling. It's chilling. It's just like, we get this scene where this guy, Fry, who's a big dude, man, he's a big dude, and he's broken into this woman's house that he's gonna kill, and he's got this knife, and she's looking at the knife, and she's looking at him, and, just the way that he describes that scene is something else. The thing about this book, once he gets into the house, once Fry breaks into her house, there's 50 pages. I mean, it's a good 50-page chase scene just of them in the house as she's trying to get away from this guy. And it is just relentless. It's fucking relentless and beautiful. I loved it. And that's the thing, is one of the things I've noticed about Dean Koontz is he does take those little scenes like that and make them 50 to 100 pages where it's just one chase scene, and he's giving you every detail of it, and you're just like, oh my gosh, and it's getting worse and worse and worse, and you're so terrified for this girl who's just, a guy's coming at her with a knife. I mean, just break it in. And then the way he described the knife, killing someone with a knife, I went to the police academy, and they told us in the police academy, they said the most scary thing out there are edged weapons, blades, people with a knife. There's the 21-foot rule. If someone's 21 feet away from you, and even if you've got a gun, they can kill you with a knife. You are not that fast with your gun. That's why police shootings, all these other things, it's like, hey, he was only wielding a knife. Why didn't you just hit him in the knee? Or why didn't you just tase him? Or, no, a knife is like more deadly than a gun in combat that's that close. And that's why the use of force continuum in law enforcement is what it is. Because knives are gross. I've seen people stabbed. I've seen a guy that got stabbed 124 times and lived. Well, that's a story for another day. But anyway, this book is extremely realistic with the violence and stuff. However, like I said, I worked in law enforcement, and I know I've been there. The cops. There's. I won't tell you. Well, the thing is Fry. They think he. It's one of those things where I can't really tell you what happens to Fry. I can't tell you what happens in this encounter because that would give away a lot of the plot of the book. But police come to investigate the encounter, all right? And I'm going to tell you right now. The police investigation, the two cops, what are their names? Clemenza and Howard. They investigate and they interrogate Hillary. And it is the most inappropriate interrogation I've ever read. I mean, like, that's not the way that's not the way investigations go. I mean, you just don't do it. I mean, everything about the investigation and everything that the cops say to the girl is completely fucking wrong. And you don't just don't call them out as liars to their face. You wait until the investigation, you wait until the trial before you bring out the whole, hey, you're lying about it. You don't, it's just, I was like, oh my gosh, that's the only thing I didn't like about this is the police. Dean Koontz needed to research police policy and procedures a whole hell of a lot more than he did, because it's just like wackadoo. I'm just like, I don't recognize this police force. They'd be fucking fired. Anyway, oh, and then one of the cops asks her out. Oh my gosh, she just fought her way. A guy has just broken into her house and tried to murder her, and I won't tell you what happens to the guy or her or anything, but one of the cops asks her out on a date in the middle of the investigation. Because, well, she fine. Oh, she fine. Oh my gosh, she a fine chick. I mean, and she's successful. But anyway, actually, to be honest, I actually thought that the relationship that developed between her and the police officer was actually kind of cool. I actually really liked that. But just between, you don't ask people out in the middle of a murder investigation, especially if they're a part of it. If they're the perpetrator or the victim. I mean, like I said, much police policy and procedure is not followed in this book whatsoever. That being said, this book is goddamn fucking good. It is really good. It is really good. I mean, I read this a long time. I just reread it. I just reread it here just this week, and I couldn't put it down. I read it in 2 sittings. I thought, before I halfway through, I'm just like, oh my god, this is relentless. This book is fucking great. Just a great book. This is why this is the book that launched Dean Koontz's career. It is golden. Golden. You will love it. It is a thriller. It is look up thriller in the dictionary and there might be a picture of this book. I mean, this is the very definition of a thriller. So anyway, I give it 9.5 out of 10. The only reason I dropped it half a point was because of the bullshitty cop stuff. Had me rolling my eyes. But, I overlooked it. 9.5 out of 10 for Whispers.